You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
It's Thursday, June 25th, and we're live from the Cannon House office building, Rotunda. Welcome to 535. I'm Paul Kane of Notice. You've probably seen in your social media feeds a lot of political content. Some of that is from members of Congress running for office, candidates. Some of it is from people that we call influencers. Now, Congressman Mark Takano of California is here to talk about a bill that he is introducing to require anybody who is in this influencer world to disclose whether or not they have been paid. Because a lot of these influencers behind the scenes are actually getting paid by campaigns to talk about the campaign, to hype the campaign. Congressman, joining us now, tell us about the bill and sort of what it was that got you interested in this. How did it start?
So there's a bit of a gap in federal election law, which I'm attempting to close with this bill, the PAID Act. It requires that in federal elections, influencers who are being paid by federal candidates or people who support those federal candidates, that they disclose, that influencers disclose that they're being paid. Where did this come from? Well, I am a California representative. I am also a California voter. I was puzzled as to which gubernatorial candidate that I was going to support. I didn't endorse until very, very late in the race. And I watched certain influencers, to my surprise, say that they were for candidate X. And I'm like, that's odd. This person who has millions of followers is suddenly saying great things about candidate X, and it seemed a bit odd. 3 or 4 days later, that influencer gets outed by other influencers as taking money from candidate X. And I said, and I could actually feel that would change things, that information would change things. I said, and it turns out that California law does require that influencers report or disclose this, but it's not in federal law. So,
does the California law, how does it work in terms of how is it supposed to work in terms of the logistics? Is the influencer supposed to say it in that social media post, like that this content was paid for by, Governor Gavin Newsom's PAC,
this is all kind of a new territory.
Yeah.
We're all kind of, I think across America, we're used to, I'm Mark Takano and I approve of this message,
yes.
right? I mean,
that came out of the 2002 campaign finance law that we used to call McCain-Feingold.
Yes. So we're used to that. That norm, I don't know, has been, influencers are a relatively new phenomenon. They were a force 2 years ago, 4 years ago, but really, in the hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in California, it became an even bigger thing. So what is the issue behind all this to me is influencers have the patina or the appearance of somehow being organic, right? That they are
authentic,
they build this following through their charisma, through the sheer connection they have with followers. And that's what makes them, I think, very influential. And so when it intersects with politics and there's money changing hands and that influence is being paid, I think that's when the followers and voters have a right to know that they're being paid by some entity, whether it's the candidate, a PAC, or something like that. And so I'm starting that debate. I rushed to get something introduced on the day of the California election. It's very relevant in California.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a preference as to how that disclaimer? You want it to be disclosed in the actual post. You don't want to wait like 10 days for a campaign filing that gets buried in like online.
The goal is transparency.
Yeah.
The goal is anytime you're saying something nice about that candidate, anytime, from the point that you receive money as an influencer, you should have to now disclose whenever you talk about something related to the campaign that involves the candidate that you've been paid by, or the group that you've been paid by. You should have to disclose it somehow. Now I don't know if that means, how that actually gets worked out. But anyway, that I think the idea. So what I believe will happen is influencers will start to hold each other accountable as well.
Oh.
Right. So influencers. So it won't matter if we fine them a certain amount of money, or money gets. But I think the real accountability is going to come when influencers are going to say, well, so-and-so was cited by the FEC for not having done this.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because what is the influencer's real currency? It's the authenticity being put in, their credibility being put at stake here, right?
Yes.
So I think there's going to be a kind of an influencer market accountability, but the role of government here, I think, is properly limited, but I think it can be very effective in terms of being the referee.
Yeah. My coworker at Notice, Jenna Monin, wrote about your bill introduction a couple weeks ago, and if I understand it right, this does not cover super PACs and dark money?
It does not cover super PACs and dark money. Well, as I said, we rushed to get it introduced on the day of the California election. It's something we're going to continue to work on. So okay. I would like to be able to cover dark money and super PACs as a part of this. That was also amount of independent expenditure that goes on in California statewide campaigns, huge.
Yes.
Probably as big as what goes on nationally, to be honest with you.
And in terms of Republicans on this, this came up in the Alabama Senate race. Barry Moore, who's a lot further to the right, not somebody that you're normally going to align yourself with, but he filed a complaint against his opponent, I think, in the runoff in the Alabama Senate race.
Sure.
Have you been able to talk to any Republicans?
I have been able to talk to Republicans. I've talked to several. Their offices are reviewing the language of my bill as we speak. My fellow Democrat Adam Schiff, Senator Adam Schiff, is co-sponsoring. But I'm optimistic I'm going to get Republican co-sponsors.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
I'm optimistic. I think this is transcends ideology.
Is this how big a deal are they in campaigns right now? I know that after the 2024 campaign, a lot of Democrats felt like they need to get more involved in all of the various forms of whether it's a podcast or talking to influencers and social media. Are Republicans further ahead on this stuff?
I think Republicans, frankly,
are they more aware of it?
I think in the 2024 presidential election, I think the Republicans were very current with the latest tools. Very current. They were availing themselves of all sorts of ways to reach voters that did not involve legacy media. So what's important to know is that we started to learn this, Democrats started to learn this, the congressional Democrats at least, that 70% of Americans receive their news outside of legacy media. So it's media, now it could involve legacy media that's shared by your friend, but people through their social networks on social media will get legacy media news, but there's also podcasters, influencers, reels, different ways in which information gets to people. Just this last weekend, I learned a heck of a lot about Ukraine and the Ukrainian situation. Now, I took some of it as pro-Ukrainian propaganda, but it turned out not to be propaganda. It turned out to be fairly truthful. I had to go and check a lot of the things I learned about the isolation of Crimea and the situation of Transnistria. Both topics that are pretty, they're kind of niche, but these were like reels that were like 15 minutes long.
And you were watching them on your phone?
That were being shared, yeah. They were being shared through social media. Somehow the algorithm figured out I wanted to know about this stuff. And I started to verify it with other members of Congress, people in the intelligence and defense appropriations committees, and I'm going, yeah, that's all true.
What can you do? I know you're a House member, you're not a member of the Senate, and so you don't confirm FEC commissioners.
Yeah.
But the real bite in any sort of bill about federal campaign law has to go through the Federal Election Commission, which has been neutered. There are, I think, only 2 of the 6 positions are filled.
One thing I can tell you for sure is if we can get bipartisan momentum behind a bill like this, these influencers will turn their attention to that issue. It's like, these influencers have a way of grabbing onto something and not letting go, especially if it affects, in this case, their own self-interest, how to maintain their relationships and credibility with their followers. I think this is why I think this is an issue that has legs.
Is there a way to sort of loop in prediction markets on this?
I don't
Because there are some stories out there that some of the prediction markets are essentially paying influencers to talk up politics as a way to gin up more bets. Oh, I'm sorry, they say trades, but yeah, bets on their markets.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. Let me take that back to. That's more grist for the mill, as we should say.
All right. Well, on actual elections?
Sure.
What did you see that came out of the New York primary and other primaries that are key for you and for what you're seeing here, what you're hoping to achieve in the next Congress?
Well, I'm chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus, and I'm co-chair on the political side of the Congressional of Equality PAC. Equality PAC is a known force here in DC, but it's become, we've gone from, when I got to Congress, 12 members who identify as openly LGBTQI+, to 12. So from 6 to 12. So you could say we're the gayest Congress in history that we know of. And it didn't happen by accident. So yesterday, Richie Torres was reelected by a resounding number. He's my co-chair on Equality PAC. And I'm very heartened to see that Kate Conley, who is a former Army Special Ops person, I think she was a national security advisor for, that she won her primary fairly handily and will face off with
Mike Lawler.
To me, that was for me, I see a pathway to maintaining or increasing the LGBTQI presence. I think she's an amazing. She'll join Joanna Mendoza as another woman veteran who identifies as LGBTQI to be, I think, also another strong candidate. And they're both important in terms of flipping the balance of power here. They're both Democrats going after Republican incumbents.
Sure. Okay, we have a sort of tradition here. We're only a couple months old,
sure,
but we like to end with some rapid fire, just a couple of different questions that we call a 1 minute session.
Okay, good. We'll go quick.
All right. If you could fix one thing about Congress, what would it be?
The short attention span is a member of Congress. I feel like we have ADD here. Like we go from one topic to the next, and I always feel like unsatisfied that we can't delve deeper.
Okay, what's the best food in your district?
Best food in my district, Mexican food. Right now it's pozole. It changes. Right now it's pozole. It used to be chili rellenos, but when I go back, I get a hankering to have some, pozole at a particular place, and so I go
Okay.
there.
Favorite Republican?
You know, begrudgingly, I'll say it's my chairman. We're at odds with each other right now, Mike Boss, but usually we shake hands afterwards. You know, I could say terrible things. In fact, he probably likes me saying terrible things about him because it helps him in his district. But you know, we usually end up still shaking hands.
Okay. Last question. You've got a long commute when you come here.
Yeah.
From Southern California. What do you do to pass time during that long commute?
Well, sometimes I take a book with me, but you know, usually I have my iPad and I'm reading a lot of news, doing texts. I get really angry when the airline Wi-Fi goes out, intermittent, whatever. But and sometimes I'll catch up on, you know, a good series. You know, whether it's what's that? The emergency room.
The Pit.
The Pit.
The Pit.
The
yeah.
Pit. I once texted Dr. Ruiz when I was watching The Pit, saying, you know, I should not have ordered food before watching this
Very
episode.
gory, yes.
Right? And then he tells me, he says, you know, I trained at The Pit. You know, so Dr. Ruiz was at the, so
Congressman Ruiz, yeah.
Congressman Ruiz was an emergency room doctor trained at The Pit. I said, I have new respect for you after watching, you know, this series. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We'll be right back. Up next, we'll be discussing reauthorizing USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, and we'll be with Rudy Yakym. Thank you.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the people's house, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions or comments or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
In Afghanistan, the IED actually penetrated the vehicle between my legs, but it was a miracle that we all survived in the vehicle.
When I began the process to separate from the military, it was during COVID. And with the issues back home, we just knew we got to come back home and take care of the family. So we had to go stay at our mom's house. And there was already 3 people living there, and 5 of us, or 8 people. How many bedroom? Like a 2-bedroom. Like a 2-bedroom house. We were desperate.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we going to do now?
When I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm, and I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. They've really been a blessing.
I'm in the Permanent Homes for Veterans program. They built a house for me, and it's amazing.
We got the call, this is your house, and the kids and I took off just to go sit in the driveway and cry. It's life-changing. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account.
The best way to describe Operation Homefront is that it's like a family, because they're always there for you.
I would say you guys are angels behind closed doors.
Operation Homefront has impacted my family in a way that's probably going to be passed down through my family's history. It's definitely going to be a story that's going to be told for generations.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the Bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
Welcome back to Notice. I'm Paul Kane. Welcome back to 535. I'm Paul Kane of Notice. Sorry, need another cup of coffee. It may seem like just yesterday where President Trump signed the replacement for NAFTA, USMCA, into law, but that North American trade agreement is up for renewal and negotiations are ongoing. The president made some news while overseas earlier this month where he kind of blurted out that he wasn't sure if he would renew the agreement, wasn't sure if he needed the agreement. Joining us now is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, Rudy Yakym from northern Indiana. And so let's get to it. What do we need to have happen on trade? What is do we need this agreement, or is Trump just sort of bluffing?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on today. Let me talk a little bit about why this is important from the perspective of my district, and then we'll talk about the agreement itself. My district in north central Indiana, it's the South Bend Elkhart region of the state. It's the most manufacturing intense district in the entire country. We make 85% of the nation's RVs. We're the pontoon boat capital of the world. We make medical devices. Everything from 60% of the nation's knees, hips, and joints are made in my district. We're also a heavy agricultural district as well, where we rely on agricultural exports for the success of our farmers. And so from that perspective, the USMCA is critically important to my district. We're the number 3 district in the entire country for trade with Canada. So making sure that we can export our RVs and boats to Canada, because they like to enjoy their outdoors just as much as we do, that's important. Making sure that we can export our agricultural products to Mexico is critical to my district. But also we rely on Mexico for inputs to the manufacturing processes that we have in my state. These are good paying blue collar jobs in the district that we are reliant upon. So that's kind of the perspective that I approach the USMCA negotiation with. We're very fortunate that President Trump negotiated this deal back in his first term. When I think about the way that he went about the negotiations, the president has proven time and time again that he's the master negotiator. And one of the mechanisms that he put in the USMCA was the ability to go through the review process, because we want to make sure that the agreement is working for all parties, and that includes us. As I have engaged with the administration directly, we're asking for really 3 things out of the USMCA review process. Number 1, while we do have our bilateral irritants with each country, we do believe that we should maintain the trilateral nature of the agreement as opposed to negotiating separate bilateral trade agreements with each country.
That's what this administration always likes to talk about, is sort of the bilateral deals, but you want to keep it.
We think in this instance it's important to maintain the trilateral nature of the agreement. Okay. There are other cases where bilateral agreements are important and maybe should be done over these group or bulk agreements. In this particular instance, because it's North America, we think that because it's our neighbors, we should maintain the trilateral nature of the agreement. Number 2, we want to see better enforcement mechanisms baked inside the agreement so that when we do have a disagreement, we can get to a resolution faster than what we sometimes do. I'll give you a great example. Earlier, a few years ago, Mexico actually banned GMO corn because they were trying to protect their farmers. That's in violation of the USMCA. We had to step in, lobby the previous administration to go and fight that, which they ultimately did, but at the same time, we want to get to those resolutions faster. The third thing that...
How long did it take to get that? Is it resolved?
It is resolved now,
okay.
But it wasn't easy or simple or quick. So
Sure.
we want to get to very quick resolutions when we have a problem. The third thing that we're really attempting to discuss here is making sure that we combat things like Chinese oversupply and dumping on our continent. We want to make sure that they can't dump in our country or Canada or Mexico, and that there aren't perverse incentives that are created to move manufacturing out of the United States to either Canada or Mexico. So maintaining that North American fortress so we can combat China is a huge third priority as we're engaging with the administration.
Okay, what are you hearing from the administration so far? And, to reach deals like this, there always has to be a trust back and forth between all sides, and there have been tariff wars, tariff boasts, there have been countervailing punches thrown by Canada. Trying to get a bourbon in Canada right now is almost impossible because of their back and forth. What does this administration want to do, and what do they tell you they want to do on this?
Trust is a big part of it. A second component of it is a level of mutual respect. but at the same time, we have to reach an understanding between all three countries of what are the priorities of each country. And that's what we're working through right now. I mean, we have to have an understanding that we want a fair and level playing field. We have to have an understanding that we should be able to export things to Canada without any non-tariff trade barriers that sometimes come into place. We want to just fully ensure that there's trust, but also an understanding of what the issues are on all sides of the equation.
Let's go back to your district and talk about it. In the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, President Obama made that a very important symbolic trip, and he went to Elkhart to sort of talk about how they were going to try and rebound from that. And toward the end of his second term, he did a return trip there. How is the district sort of in historical impact right now compared to where it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago in terms of those manufacturing jobs you're talking about?
Yeah, Elkhart was hit very hard during 2009. I mean, the amount of layoffs and job openings in Elkhart County. I mean, you had unemployment that was getting deeper into the double digits in Elkhart County. It's not that bad today. It's nowhere near where it was in 2009. We saw during COVID just a massive spike in RV sales across the country. RVs and boats were very popular. They had record numbers during COVID. We're certainly not experiencing that today, but we don't have a 17% unemployment rate in Elkhart County at this time. So when I think about Elkhart County and the RV industry and the boat industry, I can think of no better way to celebrate America's 250 than going out, buying an RV, and going out and seeing this great country that God has blessed us with. My family and I, we've had the opportunity to explore this country in an RV in the past. We took a trip a few years ago to upstate New York in an RV manufactured in Elkhart County. There's no better way to explore this great American country than
How has the industry fared in the last year to 15 months amidst all the various tariff disputes between us and Canada and Mexico?
We work very actively with the administration on tariff issues, and we want to make sure that we have that fair and level playing field, and we have open market access for people who are manufacturing things or growing things in my district and exporting them, while at the same time making sure that we have access to inputs to manufacturing in my district. So we remain very actively engaged with the administration in representing the RV interest with the administration.
You serve on the U.S. Mexico Congressional Caucus?
I'm co-chair of that caucus,
You're
yes,
co-chair of that caucus. It feels like everything that we've heard about U.S.-Mexico for the last few years has just been about the border and border security. I'm assuming this is a caucus that has a broader jurisdiction than just the border.
The border is of course paramount. I mean, good fences make good neighbors. Under the previous administration, of course, we saw record numbers pouring across the southern border, put a lot of people in harm's way by allowing that to happen. And so this president, we're fortunate that he has secured the southern border, and that has to remain. But at the same time, Mexico is not only our neighbor, but they're also one of our top trading partners. And we've got to continue to do business with Mexico, both on the inbound side from them, but also the outbound side. We've got to be able to export things to Mexico without fear of any interference in terms of non-tariff trade barriers. We've got to ensure that we have a free and open relationship with the country of Mexico, and that's part of what this caucus helps facilitate.
Yeah. In terms of Ways and Means and USMCA, or if we're going to give it a new name, what is the exact process that Ways and Means has to go through? What is the role here of Congress in terms of the timeline for when it has to act and what we expect to happen?
We're fortunate to have very good access to the administration and ongoing dialogue with the administration as it relates to the review process of USMCA. We're fortunate that Jamison Greer comes and spends a lot of time with us. Secretary Ludnick also comes and spends a lot of time with us. A lot of the undersecretaries in Commerce come and spend time with us at Ways and Means. They're able to update us on the status of negotiations, and we're able to also air with them what the priorities of my district are. And so that two-way working relationship with the administration has been very, very good. Of course, we've got a review date that is supposed to be complete by here coming up in the next few weeks, but at the same time, it may not be done by that date, and that's okay, because if it's not done, the agreement doesn't just simply cease to exist, it continues to perpetuate forward while we're working with our neighbors in Canada and Mexico to reach an agreement. And so we're very cognizant of the fact that this administration isn't going to just simply meet a deadline for the sake of doing that and getting a bad deal. They're going to work to ensure that we've got a good review process. They're going to leverage the review process that was negotiated in USMCA by President Trump in his first term. Again, it's the mechanism that he negotiated, and I'm thankful that he did.
Do you worry, though, that this time around it's him and a prime minister to the north who they've been clashing a fair bit, and do you think, does that personality dispute put some sort of final agreement in jeopardy?
I don't think it does, and I'll tell you why. Because I think President Trump has proven again, time and time, that he's a master negotiator. And so sometimes when you're negotiating a deal, negotiations can be tough. I mean, that is the reality of negotiating a deal. I've negotiated business deals and real estate deals and acquisitions in my prior life, and that's no different than negotiating with another country. Acquisitions in business can be tough, but also negotiations with other countries can be tough. And President Trump has proven that he can take a punch and he can give a punch when necessary. But at the end of the day, he is going to negotiate a deal that is good for the United States.
Okay. Transitioning to another legislative issue, personal cause that you are devoted to, foster care. You've introduced a bill called Fostering the Future. I think the key parts of it are those older kids in foster care who are getting ready to transition out into the real world. Talk about the bill and what it would do and sort of where it stands in terms of chances of getting passed.
Yeah, this has been something that's been a large priority for First Lady Melania Trump for quite some time. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to spend some time with her here in the House Ways and Means Committee when she came and visited us recently. And we've been working with the First Lady, but also with my colleagues, Ranking Member Davis on the House Ways and Means Committee, to ensure that we get good foster bills through that support America's youth. Oftentimes our foster children don't have good examples at home that they grew up with. And so we want to make sure that our foster youth have the best opportunity for success as they transition into adulthood. You get these resources as a foster kid that are just wrapped around them to ensure that they have the love, the care, and the support that they need. What we also want to make sure is that as they transition into adulthood, they're able to bridge that gap and be an asset to society, be a productive member of society, and be able to raise their own children someday in a way that helps break that cycle.
Okay. All right. Now, we have this 5:35 1-minute questions that we do usually at the end. It's sort of meant to be a rapid fire type of questions. So, what's the best part of being in Congress?
I love fighting for Hoosiers and hosting Hoosiers here in Washington.
It's your first time referencing Hoosiers. I feel like, somewhere the delegation will be making fun of you. You got to say
you knew it was going to slip in somewhere in the interview.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If you could fix one thing, you've only been here three and a half years, but if you could fix one thing, what would it be?
The Senate.
The Senate. Oh, this is an easy one for you. What's the best committee assignment?
House Ways and Means Committee. It's the only committee that is enshrined in the Constitution. It's the oldest committee in the House.
Okay. What do you do to pass time during your commute back to the district?
So I've got a 5-hour commute door to door from my house to my office. And I use that time to prepare for the week. My team sends me all the materials I need for the week in advance, and I read them on the plane while I'm in commute.
On the way back, do you do some
on the way back,
light reading about Notre Dame football?
A little light reading on Notre Dame, or maybe just kind of relaxing a little bit and unwinding from the week.
Okay. Again, you're still sort of new here, so you must have heard some phrases around here that are uttered nowhere else but here. What's your favorite weird phrase?
So I'm an early morning in the gym guy, and one of the other early morning guys is our House Majority Whip, Tom Emmer. And every time he's walking by me on his way out of the gym, he says, "All right, Rudy, let's go punch this day in the face." And that's the only time I've ever heard that term is in the House gym from Tom Emmer.
Let's punch this day in the face. All right. Well, at 5:35 here, we're going to try and punch this day in the face. We're going to head to a break. Thank you very much for this.
Thanks for having me on.
You're watching 535. We'll be right back.
I work hard. My dad worked hard. That's where I got it from. What I take home is my future and my kids' future. And if I can invest in companies, they're going to reflect my principles, what I believe in. So why would those companies hire outside people to tell them to embrace principles I don't believe in. Congress must protect the financial future of Americans from the foreign-owned duopoly that answers to no one.
I'm Brody Mullins. Welcome back to 535. Today we have Corey Rosenbush from the Fertilizer Institute. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brody. Appreciate you having me.
You guys are big into the Farm Bill, just passed the House. Where do things stand?
Yeah, well, now it's getting kicked over to the Senate, so I know the Senate's going to work to try to get their version of the Farm Bill passed. We were very pleased with some of the provisions that were included, especially around conservation programs. So at a time right now when there's so much pressure on price and the market disruption, the tool that a farmer has to be efficient with their dollars are about biostimulants, enhanced efficiency fertilizers. We got those incorporated into some of that language, so hopefully that will benefit the farmers when they're really having a challenging time affording inputs.
Is this a bill that you think can make it through now that it's, we're getting pretty close to August, it's election year, we're running out of time? Can this happen?
Yeah, Farm Bill has always notoriously been bipartisan. Obviously, the big challenge this time is that the One Big Beautiful bill included a lot of the really key farm provisions that usually push it over the finish line. So the reference prices, crop insurance, those got included in One Big Beautiful bill. So
the engine that drives the train is pulled
that's
off?
Correct.
Okay.
So what's left over is largely a lot of the SNAP benefits, the food aid programs. And so those are not things that we have an issue with, but it has a huge political implication. So.
Right. And it seems like with the changes in the Republican Party, there's more changes in the Republican Party support for SNAP, right? That seems to be changing a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's always been fairly divided, right?
Yeah.
The Democrats support funding and support of SNAP, and Republicans tend to focus more on true farm programs.
Right.
But the farm programs are a small percentage of the Farm Bill, actually.
Yeah.
It's dominated really by the SNAP program.
Right. Well, let's go backwards. Tell us about the Fertilizer Institute. Who are your members? You have an unusual membership that you're all over the globe.
Yeah, thanks, Brody. We are the entire supply chain representing fertilizer companies from manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, importers, and retailers. And yes, that does include a lot of the international manufacturers. We're a net importer of fertilizer in this country, so we bring about a third of the fertilizer in from foreign supply. So trade is very important and supply chains are very important, and any kind of geopolitical tension really disrupts those supply chains.
And that meant tariffs were a really big deal to you, but you guys did a pretty good job, right?
Yeah, we were very fortunate when it came to tariffs. So, day one, we had the tariffs with Canada. 87% of our potash comes from Canada.
Wow.
So we had executive order after executive order in the White House being signed to exempt potash. We also had the IEEPA tariff exemptions then on most other tariff products most fertilizer products back in November.
So one of the big buzzwords on Capitol Hill, Republicans, Democrats, House, Senate, ahead of the election, is affordability.
Yes.
Food prices, grocery bills. That's brought a lot of attention all the way down to the fertilizer industry.
Yes.
Tell us about how you're dealing with that.
Well, you're right, food does start with fertilizer. About half of the crops are grown because of the use of fertilizer in this world. And it's been a challenge for growers. The farm economy's tough. Low crop prices that they're getting for the crops that they're growing at a time when input costs are going up. And so when you think about midterms coming up, and that base, especially of the Republican Party, being a lot of the rural constituents and farmers, the last thing they need are these input costs going through the roof. It's a global market, and the Iranian conflict, Russia, China, India, all have significant power and influence over what those fertilizer prices are. And that comes to rest right here in the I-states, in corn country, and in rural America. So it is a big part of the affordability conversation, and the administration, I think, especially cares what happens going into November.
So you've had a couple of opportunities to testify on Capitol, House Judiciary.
I don't know, I would call them opportunities.
Requests, invitations.
Yes.
House Judiciary last fall, Senate Ag more recently. How have those gone?
Yeah, 3 and 6 months is more than I want to. We had the House Ag Committee hearing too, so it has been the key issue for agriculture. And we actually visited a little bit about the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the stakes were so high because of some of the DOJ investigations that were being discussed, antitrust claims, That actually ended up being a cakewalk compared to the Senate Ag Committee hearing that we had a few weeks ago.
Really?
The tension was extremely high.
And how much of this is politics versus policy?
It's probably 90% politics.
Okay.
There was one segment where I was attacked pretty hard by a senator who spent his whole 5 minutes really coming after me and the industry really pretty significantly. And you know, he has a tough race. So those sound bites, it's political theater, of course, in many cases, you know. I was the villain. And that's always a challenging role to play. But you know, the farm economy is feeling it, and you know, a pound of flesh is important sometimes going into these, and we're an easy target right now.
And Donald Trump, the FTC, and DOJ, I believe, have all sort of talked about looking into the high cost of food prices. What is your message back to them?
Yeah, they have, and those investigations have been ongoing, and there continues to be media buzz around it. You know, a lot of the information is just incorrect. There's always this discussion that the 4-phosphate producers make up 80% of the market share in the U.S., and it's just incorrect. The entire domestic industry only makes up 60% of total market share. The other 40% are foreign suppliers. There's actually 36 different companies that supply phosphates for the U.S. growers, so it can't be a monopoly when you have 4 producers not even making up just over half of the total market in the United States. But sometimes those data points don't get out, and again, because of some of the frustration that some of the growers are feeling, those kind of sound bites catch on really fast, and it's something that the administration has latched on to.
Therefore, the war in Iran is causing a problem for you also.
Huge.
So much of the supply comes from overseas and from that area. How have you explained that away, since I think if most people think all these fertilizers come from the United States and prices are going up, they're going to blame you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's been the one consistent thing, is that people have understood that has had a significant impact, and it was really about timing. The timing could not have been worse because it was during spring planting. Fertilizer gets consumed in just a few months out of the year. So unlike oil and gas, which gets a lot of the media, you're using oil and gas all year long. Fertilizer, you're using it when you're putting the crops in the ground, and in the fall as well after harvest. And so when you look at about a third of the world's urea passing through the Strait of Hormuz for global trade, that's going to have a significant disruption. The bigger story that I don't think actually is hit yet is sulfur. So sulfur is not only an important fertilizer, but it's a key raw material for manufacturing phosphate fertilizer, and more than half of the globally traded sulfur passes through the Strait of Hormuz. We have not seen any ships come out with any of the fertilizer, any of the sulfur. We saw sulfur trading as high as $1,300 a metric ton from the Gulf near the Houston area.
What is it normally?
Roughly? $100, less than $100.
Wow.
And it's
So when does that hit?
mainly being bought up by the Chinese for mining operations.
Wow.
So if they're going to use it in their operations to mine copper or nickel that's getting $18,000 a metric ton, they can afford to run up that price when phosphate fertilizers only sells for $600 a ton.
Right.
And so it's at a point now where it's not even affordable to manufacture that product. So you've got Morocco, the Middle East, the United States, all starting to shutter phosphate production right now.
Wow. So that'll be a looming crisis. That's something that most Americans don't know about.
That crisis hasn't arrived yet.
Wow. When will
it's
that
coming.
arrive?
It's
Before
coming.
the election?
The fall will be tough.
Wow. Secretary Rollins, let's talk about what they've been doing in terms of having press conferences, talking a lot about some issues that can also affect you guys in terms of long-term plans or managing your plants. How have you addressed that?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked very closely with the Secretary, with the White House. When the Iranian conflict broke out, we sent a letter with 7 recommendations. I think they've ticked off 5 of them now that they've achieved. So bottom line, because it's a globally traded commodity, there's not a lot that can be done to really influence price. However, there are some things that can alleviate supply chain disruptions. So whether it's their hours of service exemption for fertilizer that they granted, they provided some license to start bringing in some of the Venezuelan urea. They looked at various incentives to build domestic production. That's going to take 5 years, and it's $4 billion plus to build a plant. But I think those are the right moves today, particularly if we're going to lose a lot of the production from the Middle East. we're not really sure if those plants have survived the bombing. Wow. So even if the strait were to open, we're not sure of the damage to a lot of those fertilizer plants. So this is the time when the United States, with its affordable and abundant natural gas, we can start to position ourselves to really take over that global position of manufacturing nitrogen here, and really onshoring, which is a big part of the president's agenda.
Right. Corey Rosenbush, the Fertilizer Institute, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
I'm Brody Mullins. We'll be back on 535.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Congresswoman, we only have a couple minutes,
Okay.
which is perfect for our 535 1 minute.
Should I be afraid?
Who's the smartest member of Congress?
So I'm really putting you on the spot here.
You know, don't tell anybody this.
I'm too much of a politician to answer that question.
This is crazy.
What's the best committee? I do like them all.
On you, baby.
That was good. That was good.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org.
Here we are, back on 535. I'm Scott McFarland, and we're joined by Gregory Meeks, top Democrat, House Foreign Affairs Committee, soon to be the dean of the New York congressional delegation in January. If
I need another responsibility like I need a hole in the head.
You need more work, you need more jobs. And for some reason, the congressman has joined us without his New York Knicks jersey on beneath his suit, which he was sporting last week.
Yeah, I've worn it so many days, my wife said I had to wash it.
You have to wash it eventually. Yeah, I appreciate that. New York's 5th District includes Queens, includes JFK Airport, includes a lot of the beachfront there in New York City. I want to talk about your foreign affairs responsibilities because there are many right now, especially this effort you authored that got to the House floor on war authorization. It passed the House, bipartisan, for the war in Iran, passed the Senate, bipartisan, then they flipped the script on you last night. What should we make of the fact that the Senate has reversed, but the House has made a statement on the War Powers Authorization Resolution?
Well, let me just say, the first Senate vote still counts. The president went on a rant. He basically went after all of the senators in a lunch meeting yesterday, and he convinced a couple of them to either vote present or change, but that vote is still passed. And so we still have a resolution that passed in the House and that passed in the Senate. You know, there is some ambiguity as rather to what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, the White House is saying nothing should happen next.
Well, look, but we're looking at and exploring it because it's unclear of whether or not it's a concurrent resolution that has passed and whether or not that is enforceable without the president. So we are talking and continuing to have conversation with some on the Senate side, talking with lawyers to make a determination of whether this is something that we should take to court or not. But I think that the message has been clearly sent to the White House that in a bipartisan basis, and if you look at every poll that is out there now, the American people are against this president's war of choice in Iran. That it's unauthorized, because it never was authorized by Congress, and that they want the President of the United States to come to Congress, and that's what Congress is saying now also, to inform us, as he did not do in the beginning, has not done in the middle, has not done, because we don't know when the end is really going to be, why we went to war. Because when we look at the agreement, so-called agreement that's happening right now, the Memorandum of Understanding, it seems like it just takes us back to exactly where we were before.
I want to ask you about the memorandum in a moment, but first about the resolution. It is a statement, it's a bipartisan statement. Is there a history of concurrent resolutions having a way of binding the executive branch to take action?
Yeah, I think that, you know, this is the first time that we really had to do this. We didn't do it, you know, when, I've been in Congress now a long time. I was here when we had to do the war in Afghanistan, right after 9/11. We didn't have to do a memorandum, we didn't have to do a war powers resolution, but we did an AUMF. We've got to do something when Congress came to, where the executive branch came to Congress. So I can recall at that particular time, I had access to the Secretary of State and all those other individuals that was involved. I had access to the Pentagon. We had hearings where folks came before the committee, answered committee questions, so that we can get answers to make their determination. We've had none of that.
Well, let's then talk
this time, and that's why we needed to put this resolution, because this is unprecedented by a President of the United States.
Did it surprise you when the Senate passed it initially as well?
Well, I knew that there were debates going back and forth, and I knew that it would take time, and I knew that we were working with the Senate all along. And so that's why I made sure that we drafted a bill, a resolution, that would be workable by the House and the Senate and some Republicans. Because I know that Republicans are also facing criticisms in their districts. They had to go home. And they're hearing the cry of the American people in a bipartisan way.
Well, let's talk about the Memorandum of Understanding. You brought it up. Has your committee been briefed on any component of it? Have you, as a committee, seen black and white versions of this?
I've seen absolutely nothing.
No calls?
No call. There was one call that was put together at the last minute that was supposed to be of the gang, the so-called Gang of 16. That call came with an hour's notice. Leader Jeffries was supposed to be a part of it. Both Leader Jeffries and I were in Chicago at the opening of the Obama Library. And so that's the only...
That's a week ago today.
That's a week ago today.
Yeah.
For about, and I understand that conversation took place for about 45 minutes. And that's the only thing. And one of the things that I'm told that was offered, because I had a staffer that was on the call, was that Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner said that they would entertain and have questions with members who were not there. Since that time, we put in repeated requests to have a dialogue and conversation with Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff. And we've got nothing in response. And I'm really upset about that because you saw Senator Cassidy, they spoke to him. Now, I'm the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I have my colleagues asking me, well, have at least, if it hasn't been the full committee, have at least they talked to you? And my answer has to be, no, they have not. So I have zero to work with as far as really information. I get my information the way the American public does, from you or individuals like you, and newscasts and the New York.
Do you think your committee's going to have some type of open meeting, hearing, look at this thing before you all recess for the election?
Apparently not.
Okay.
We have not had one hearing, not one, on this war. We've been able to ask questions of the Secretary of State when he had to come in on a mandatory basis to talk about State Department reauthorization and what's going on in the State Department. So therefore, we had an opportunity to ask him some questions at that particular time. But there's not been one hearing that was put in place to talk specifically about the war in Iran.
Let's talk about trade, also going through your committee. The USMCA has some type of future, this new variant of the old NAFTA that Trump saw through years ago. What do you think happens next with that? Does that change? Does it shift? Does it go away?
No, it's actually, to be accurate, the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee.
Fair enough.
And
Fair
not
enough.
the jurisdiction
because
of
it's
the
money.
House. That's exactly right. So that is their jurisdiction. But I do have a viewpoint. And my viewpoint is we must make sure that we maintain a relationship with our closest allies and neighbors right here in the Western Hemisphere, and it's important for the economies of both the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's important for job creation in America, as well as others, and working collectively together. So we have to find that common bound as we did before and make sure that it is good for all of us. Because if not, folks will look elsewhere, and that's not beneficial to any of us.
What are next steps in this? Where does it go from here?
So I think that there's further negotiations. There's, when you talk about trade agreements, peace treaties and everything else, you have to negotiate. That's hard. It doesn't happen overnight. You get people, in negotiations, you get what's important to them, what's important to us. What has been important as it comes to Mexico is to make sure, human rights are not violated, make sure there's labor standards wherever they may be, to make sure that there's equitable purchases as far as trade is concerned. So those things have to be negotiated, and that's what happens through the Ways and Means Committee directly, and those that in the Commerce Department, which is tremendously important, and the Trade Representative, they get involved in that dialogue and conversation. Then, of course, they bring it to Congress, and we didn't try to vote on it or give our 2 cents in that regards also. So, for me, it's important that we look at where we are now, because times and change so quickly, and the commodities that we may be talking about, or what we, I know it's agriculture, but now with tech and automobiles, the types and the number of cells, all of that just changes over time. So now you need to reevaluate from the time that the agreement initially was there. Where are we now? What worked? What didn't work? What we think needs to be the next step. So all of those things have to be discussed, and dialogue happens, and then we come up with an agreement that's appropriate for where we are at this particular time, as opposed to where we were at that particular time.
It's been a pretty dramatic 16 months for the U.S.-Canadian relationship. Overall, economic and otherwise, it's been a disruptive 16 months. From your vantage point, from your committee post, how do you see the current relationship between the two countries?
It is worse than it's ever been.
Worse.
And it started with, and I had to do this from my committee also, when the current president of the United States wanted to put tariffs on Canada for no reason at all, when he didn't have the authority to do it. And so what we had to do, again, to work across the aisle with Republicans and come up with what is known as a motion to discharge, so that we can vote to say that the president did not have the authority to put the tariffs on Canada in the way that he did. And then soon thereafter, the courts came back and said what we said. The president didn't have that authority. But the dialogue, the conversation, the insults that this president has given to the Canadian administration and the Canadian people has caused a rift. And I wish I could say it was just limited to Canada, but many of our allies around the world. In fact, it seems to me that what our president has done, those countries who are our allies, he's treated them as if they were our adversaries. And those countries that are our adversaries, he's treated them as if they are our allies. We're talking about our European allies, for example.
You mentioned the discharge petitions, the motion to discharge. Another one has just been authored today by Congressman Raskin involving the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Take your political criticisms of the other party out of it for a moment. You've been here since 1998. All these discharge petitions, including the one you effectively shepherded through to completion, how rare is this?
Very rare.
You don't see this in normal
Very
times.
rare. In fact, you were told that you never do discharge petitions.
Never, yeah.
But we never had a situation like this, where we have the speaker blocking bills from getting onto the floor simply because the president of the United States says, don't allow that bill on the floor.
It's not uncommon for a Republican speaker to block Democratic preferred bills from getting on the floor. This is a little different, though.
But because he was blocking them because he knew Republicans would vote for them also.
Because they vote for them.
So he did not. He knew that they would pass if they got on the floor. And so many, some of the Republicans, they waited it out. It took me 14 months to get some of these on the floor. Where finally, when people go home and they're hearing from their constituents, they now have to come back and tell the speaker and the president, look, I've got to sign this.
And for the 535 and those who watch this, What tools does the Speaker have to bottle up your discharge petition? You've got the signatures, you're ready to move. The Speaker still has the power to slow these things down.
Because it has to go through rules. So it gets into the Rules Committee, and then he makes sure that that the rule changes, or he tries to fix it so that it can't get out of rules, and therefore it never gets to the floor. But what we were able to do working, which was unprecedented to a degree, again, because when you talk about tariffs, or you talk about my Ukraine motion to discharge, which people wanted to make sure that we stood against Russia, and for the Ukrainians, and they were hearing from their constituents. And after 14 months, they said, it's time. So they signed on to the petition, the motion to discharge, and voted to get, in the rule, to get it on the floor. And we saw more Republicans than 16 that signed on to pass the bill, so that we're standing with our NATO allies and our ally and friend in Ukraine, and not with Russia.
Speaking of these foreign relationships and the money needed, you're getting briefed, I suspect, on the administration's request for $80 billion plus more to help offset costs for the war in Iran, to backfill the munitions, to pay for other assorted needs as well. Have you been briefed on that, and does the caucus have any, unifying thoughts on it?
Absolutely no briefing.
Nothing yet?
Nothing. We requested it, but nothing. And that's been consistent with this White House. He's trying to avoid going to Congress at all points. And so oftentimes, and the Speaker seems to go along with it.
It can't be surprising they're going to need some money to pay those costs, though, right?
No, it's not surprising. Yeah. But tell us what? What are you going to use it for? How are you going to use it? Why you need it? Those are the roles that Congress plays. One of the big difference from our way of government as opposed to others is Congress authorizes the money, not the president, because he's not a king. He has to come to Congress. And so if you come to Congress, we got questions.
Hearing some of your colleagues say they're a hard no immediately. Is that the right footing to be on?
Well, I think most of them saying they're a hard no because they don't know anything what is being utilized for. Yeah. So if I'm a hard no without knowing what it's going to be utilized for. I'm not going to say I can't be a hard yes. I'm a hard no because I need information.
We're talking about the 5th Congressional District as you sat down here. You have Queens, you have a no shortage of remarkable diverse communities and neighborhoods. What are some of the parts of the 5th District that people should know about, or what are the places you like to go to, eat at, be at?
Look, the 5th District is America and the world. So I'm going to invite, if you want something, if you like, number one, if you're coming into the 5th District from any place in the world, you're probably landing at JFK Airport, which is part of it. Welcome to the 5th District, welcome to New York, welcome to America. So that's the first thing. Then you can enjoy the ocean. We've got the Rockaways and the ocean front and beaches that are beautiful that you could go visit. If you would need an education, we've got St. John's University and York College that's there, so that we have the highest quality of education. If you like Caribbean food, come to the 5th District. If you like Spanish food, come to the 5th District. If you like Indian food, come to the 5th District. If you like Chinese food, come to the 5th. So whatever you like.
Do you claim ownership and responsibility for the Mets?
I claim ownership.
Own it if you do.
Well, look, I'm a Mets fan.
All right.
I'm a long-abiding Mets fan. And what I know is there's hope. How do I know there's hope? The New York Knicks, baby. They won after 53 years.
Explain why that's such a big deal in the city. There's certain cities in America, Seattle used to be one of them, Chicago certainly one of them, where the NBA team has an outsized impact. Why is that true in New York?
Look, number one, New York is, and the Madison Square Garden is the Mecca. It is the basketball capital of the world. Everybody wants to play in New York. Whether
at
you
that arena.
At that arena. Yeah. That's a big deal. Number two, it's with kids. I grew up poor basically and in public housing. So no matter whether you're rich or you're poor, it's the one sport that you can play. You could go out there on a basketball court and start shooting a ball. Somebody else come, you play a pickup game. So everybody's into basketball in that regards. And so then you pick out your players. And you know, what has happened over the years, 53 years after 1973, we've had good teams at times, not since 1999 though, but my heart was broken. And so, but you continue to root, you never give up. And that's what you do if you're a New Yorker, you continue to fight. And this particular team is so similar to the team in 1973 because it was indeed that, a team. Not one person that just overshadows everyone. Everybody had a role. Everybody was working class. Everybody made sacrifices for this team. And comeback.
It's
game
metaphorical
after
or something.
game after game. Comeback. You know, so that's what New York is about. As Frank Sinatra said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
I also suspect you can bond with Republicans over sports. It's a more and more toxic atmosphere here. Everybody seems to agree on that. It seems like you can build some bridges on that topic.
Well, look, and the big topic right now where we all bonded, USA soccer, baby. Football. Yeah. We are all rooting for USA to get into the finals and to win the FIFA title. We are together on that. And we win, you'll see us collectively on the steps of the Capitol cheering and welcoming the USA football team, as we did what you saw with the hockey team. You know, we had them here. We all went together on that, both men and women. So, and it's the same thing here. So it is. Sports is something that does and will bring us together.
Gregory Meeks, top Democrat, House Foreign Affairs Committee, New York's 5th District, been here since 1998, and come January, we expect him to be the dean of the New York Congressional Delegation. Thank you, Mr. Meeks. I'm Scott McFarland, 535. Trade and Tech Week continues in a moment.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
All right, Luke, so tell us about how the sausage is made.
Well, generally, the issue is that so much of what's happening in various local economies is shaped by federal policy here in Washington. You know, what we're trying to do is really get at these sort of various advocacy groups and institutions that work sort of behind the scenes.
What we're talking about at 535 is sort of the sausage-making process, and it's not just the members on the Hill and their staff. It's the advocacy organizations, it's the trade organizations, it's the grassroots, it's the regular Americans, the business owners back home. This is the type of content that we're going to have on 535 that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Absolutely, yeah.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Leanne Caldwell with Puck News, and now I am joined by Oregon Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about, you want to impeach Linda McMahon,
correct,
the Secretary of Education.
Correct.
You are on the Education Committee.
I am.
So why McMahon? She seems to be someone who has not been in the news for some sort of scandal.
Well, there's a lot of reasons.
Okay, tell me.
And yes, as a member of the Education Committee, I've heard for years and years about the importance of the federal programs in education. Things like the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Title I to help low-income students. All of these education programs that really help level the playing field for students across this country. And this administration, under the direction of Linda McMahon and obviously the Trump administration, are trying to shut down the Department of Education. Congress created the Department of Education. Congress gave these education programs to the Department of Education, so they can't shut that down and end those programs without congressional approval. And Congress has not voted.
So why should she be impeached on because she's trying to implement what the president wants?
because it is against the law. It is, again, Congress created the Department of Education. They can't shut it down without congressional approval. There's a reason why we have separation of powers, and we have the legislative branch, and when Congress makes decisions like the creation of a Department of Education and placing those programs at the Department of Education, it would take an act of Congress to do that, and they have not asked Congress to move these programs or to shut down the department. And what they're doing essentially is trying to carry that out without congressional approval, and that is against the law.
How many people remain at the Department of Education?
Not enough, not nearly enough. They have significantly cut the staff from thousands to hundreds, and they have sent more than 140 different programs to different agencies. It takes a whole complicated chart to follow it all. They started sending programs, some to the Department of Labor, some to the State Department, some to other places. What really put me over the top and what I'm hearing about from constituents and advocates across the country is the two steps that they took a few days ago. And that is sending IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, to the Department of Health and Human Services. That's under RFK Jr., which is terrifying to many parents.
Yeah.
And to send the Office of Civil Rights to the Trump department's Department of Justice. Those programs were created for the Department of Education, and that's where they belong.
Especially since the civil rights under justice barely exists. The
Correct.
department actually barely exists anymore.
Correct.
So a lot of that has been moved to immigration enforcement,
right,
as far as my understanding goes. So what are you hearing from your state, from your local communities about how these changes at the Department of Education has impacted what is happening on the ground regarding education?
Well, there's an extreme amount of concern about what will happen, both because of who's leading those agencies, RFK Jr., and of course the Department of Justice. It's just chaotic everywhere. With the Trump department's Department of Justice really going after political people. So what I'm hearing at home is a lot of concern, a tremendous amount of concern about moving these programs out of the Department of Education, where they were consolidated there because it's better, it's more efficient, it's better for students, better for families, better for educators, to split these up. So it's going to create chaos and a lot of uncertainty. I'm especially hearing from disability rights groups and parents of students with disabilities. They are extremely concerned. They know the progress that was made with the Individuals with Disabilities Act. They know that that means their child gets a free and appropriate public education. Moving it to the Department of Health and Human Services, they are concerned, is turning it into a healthcare issue. Do students deserve access to healthcare? Absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about. This is an education program. The Department of Health and Human Services is not equipped to run it. They don't have the expertise. And it's really concerning parents that instead of treating their child like a student who deserves education, they're treating them like a patient. And that's not what this law is about.
Isn't moving a program to another agency better than eliminating it, though?
Well, that shouldn't be the choice. Again, that would be a decision of Congress. If they want to come to Congress and say, do you want to eliminate the Individuals with Disabilities Act, that's going to go down in flames because that's had broad bipartisan support across the country since it was created. It's never been fully funded. Our obligation has not been met to fully fund it at the federal level. But this Congress, I assure you, will not get rid of the Individuals with Disabilities Act.
How is the administration communicating with the Education Committee or Congress generally about these changes that are happening? Are they giving you a heads up? Are they informing you what's happening and why? What is that process
Not
like?
necessarily, although the Education Secretary has been to the committee twice, and I've had conversations with her as well. So it wasn't a surprise. We knew that she was considering moving these programs out, just as she has moved out other programs, smaller programs. For example, current technical education. Again, an education bill they moved to the Department of Labor. Without the appropriate staff, without the expertise. And again, these are programs that Congress put at the Department of Education that's where they belong. And if they want to move them, come and ask Congress, but they don't have the authority to do that without. They're saying, and we were told, that they were going to use these interagency agreements. And when I looked at the history of those, and I spoke to the Secretary about those, I said, those are to transfer some, maybe ministerial or bulk purchasing type duties, not to transfer the entire program. She knows. I've had conversations with her.
What did she say?
She said, well, we're going to use these interagency agreements. But that's not what those are for. Again, they need congressional approval to move these programs, and they probably know they won't get it. So they're moving them to agencies without the legal authority to do so.
I know you're on an authorizing committee, not an appropriations committee,
Correct.
but I do want to ask, do you have any understanding of how this stuff is being funded? When it is moving to other when these programs are moving to other agencies, is Congress appropriating money to fund these specific programs in other agencies, or is Congress determined to fund the Department of Education and providing money for that?
I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen in the appropriations process that there's been any sort of affirmative deconstruction or closing down of the Department of Education. It's my understanding that many of the programs are still funded without specifically saying they're the Department of Education. But again, this administration does not have the authority to move programs that Congress created at the Department of Education. They don't have the authority to shut down the Department of Education. And moving all the programs out is essentially shutting it down. And the Secretary has said she wants her final mission to be to close the agency. She didn't make any secret of that.
No, has she provided a timeline? She's 1.5 years in.
She has not provided a timeline, but she has said multiple times that that's what her mission is, to shut down the Department of Education. She doesn't have the authority to do that. That would have to be done by Congress. And I have to say that the reason these programs were put at the Department of Education is because that's where they make sense.
Yeah.
And that's where, she's also said something, it's going to be more efficient to send them to other agencies. No, it won't. It'll just create more chaos. Because if there's still anybody left at the Department of Education, then what are people supposed to do?
Yeah.
Who do they call if they have a question? Do they call the Department of Education? What's left of it? Do they try to find somebody at HHS?
Yeah.
What if they have a discrimination case? What if their child is not getting the free and appropriate education? Who do they call? Do they call what used to be the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education? Or do they call the DOJ? Who knows? It's just going to be chaotic. And so that's why we're seeing an outcry. And that's what really inspired me to draft this resolution, which we plan to introduce sometime tomorrow, this week at the latest, is the amount of outcry that I heard when that announcement was made about moving the OSERS, which is the office that runs the Individuals with Disabilities Act, to RFK Jr. and to move civil rights to the Trump's DOJ. The outcry has been pretty amazing in terms of the volume, and people have reached out and said, this is really concerning. They can't do this. The Education Law Center, for example, this is illegal.
Well, I know that this is brand new. What sort of support do you have from your fellow Democratic colleagues?
Several colleagues who are committed to signing on, and more who are considering. We're just getting the text out, and we're planning to introduce either tomorrow or definitely this week.
Yeah. Are you doing it through discharge petition?
We haven't made that determination
Okay.
yet. We want to get the message out there to say to people who are so worried, we are not going to stand by and let this happen. And people, when I'm home, when I'm talking particularly with education advocates, they're saying, how can this happen? How can this be happening? Where is Congress? Do something.
Yeah.
And so we're doing something.
Do you worry, though, that if, say, like Linda McMahon is impeached, that Trump just puts someone worse in the job?
Well, that's in the future. I need to send a message to parents and educators and students across this country that we are standing up to them here in Congress and want to save the Department of Education. Do we have work to do in education? Absolutely. And that's why I'm committed on the Education Committee to doing all I can to improve educational opportunities. More than 90% of kids in this country go to public schools, and more than about 95% of students with disabilities go to public schools. And I want to say to those families, we have your back. We hear your concerns. We know you don't want these programs moved away from the staff and the agency that's had the expertise over the years. And I heard many, many times from people over the years I've been on the committee, please fully fund IDEA. Nobody ever said, please move IDEA out of the Department of Education and send it to people without the expertise or the funding to handle it.
Yeah, great. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching 535. We'll be right back.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Brody Mullins. Pleased to have Curtis LeGeyt with us, President and CEO of the National Associated Broadcasters. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
I want to start with a sort of weird question. The broadcasters are widely supported, House, Senate, Republicans, Democrats. Why does everyone love their local broadcasters?
Yeah, well,
easy question.
I think the way that you described it is exactly why, which is that we're local, right? I mean, you've got a lot of media out there that are covering the national stories, but our members have local stations, television and radio in every congressional district in the country. We are on the ground serving those communities with trusted news. Obviously, times of emergency, when other forms of communications fail, broadcasters are there to ensure that those towns and cities can navigate those natural disasters. We're covering city halls, and we're there philanthropically in the communities that we serve. So we're really proud of the work that these local stations do, and I think members of Congress really see that up close.
And there's a couple of really interesting issues going on involving you guys on the Hill right now I want to talk about.
Yeah.
One is the NFL and sports. So as more and more people are watching streaming and through cable, you have to subscribe to so many different streaming services to watch your games. I think, Senator Lee had a number, I forget, was it $2,000 or some insane amount of money that you need to pay, that Americans need to pay to watch their own local team.
Yes.
So tell us about that issue. You testified recently in the House Judiciary. How'd that go?
It went really well. I think what we're seeing is that there's overwhelming policymaker concern with this migration of sports from freely accessible broadcast television over to these streaming platforms, which then tucks them behind paywalls. And consumers, as you said, are frustrated. Survey after survey is showing that consumers are confused. The fact that they've got to subscribe to any number of streaming services just to watch their favorite teams, consumers are fed up. And so part of what we're reminding members of Congress, and frankly what we're reminding the leagues, is that fans want that access to their favorite teams through their local broadcast television station. It is freely available. The reach that we give these leagues is unparalleled. But these partnerships that have been mutually beneficial, obviously building up local broadcast and our viewership, but also helping these leagues and local teams expand their fan bases. It's been a win-win. But now you've got these streaming services, global big tech behemoths with deep pockets coming in, bidding for these sports rights, and consumers are frustrated.
And they're frustrated, I think, with the NFL also. Roger Goodell was asked to testify at the hearing a few weeks ago, or a week ago, and didn't come. Was that controversial?
Certainly there is a lot of focus on the NFL. The NFL and the other pro leagues negotiate their media deals under a law that was enacted by Congress 60 years ago, the Sports Broadcasting Act. Okay. And so that's what really gives Congress the hook to look at this. And the public access bargain that underpins that act was pretty simple. Congress gave the leagues a very limited antitrust exemption to pool their media rights in order to negotiate with what was then 3 major broadcast networks. And the trade was that what fans gained by enabling them to do that was broad access for free to games. And you fast forward, and I think lawmakers are rightfully asking the question of the NFL specifically as to whether the act is being misused by enabling their negotiations and tucking games behind, Amazon Prime on Thursday nights, Netflix on holidays, YouTube TV, especially the Sunday ticket. There's a fan frustration with that, and the legislative intent behind the Sports Broadcasting Act was specific. It was narrowly applied to league negotiations with free broadcast television. And so we're drawing lawmaker attention to that issue, but frankly, I think their constituents are drawing their attention to the issue because their constituents are mad. And we heard during the hearing that you referenced, lawmaker after lawmaker just really taking the NFL to task for what are some frustrating decisions that are making it harder for fans to access games.
And what was the hearing like? Was it hostile or I know it got a lot of attention, but what was it like to be a witness there?
Well, sports is one issue here. At the NAB, we advocate on any number of issues, and some of them are more wonky spectrum issues. Obviously, there's a lot going on in terms of our newsrooms, our ability to deliver local news. But when you talk about sports, the lawmakers get it. They're traveling all the time, so a lot of them have their favorite teams that they're following. I'm a New England Patriots fan. I'm here in Washington, D.C., but I'm a transplant, so in a lot of ways I deal with same frustrations that the lawmakers deal with, which is how hard it is to just find ways to access your team, especially when you're traveling. So you don't need to tell this story to lawmakers. They're living it. They hear it from their constituents. What was interesting, as you alluded to, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, was invited to testify at this hearing. So I think we certainly heard some frustration that the NFL declined to testify. And as a result of that, in some ways, the story was about who wasn't there to tell their side of the story. Versus who was there, which is obviously myself on behalf of the local broadcast stations across the country that want to deliver these games for free to audiences, connect fans. There was a representative from the Restaurant Association at the hearing talking about the impact on local sports bars and restaurants as it's becoming more and more difficult and more costly to air those games in sports bars. And so, there was just a lot of conversation around the consumer harm, and no one there really defending the decisions that the leagues are making to push more and more games behind paywalls.
Fascinating. Let me ask you a different question. This show's called the 535. Yeah. It's going out to the 535 members of Congress, but also their staff and younger staff hopefully are watching. Tell us about your career. I mean, you're the head of the National Association of Broadcasters now, but you're a former Senate staffer. Tell us about how you got to the Hill and how you moved up.
Yeah, well, look, I think like many of both the members of Congress and the staff that you're talking about, I got out of law school. Prior to that, I had always had a passionate interest in politics, went to law school, and wanted to find myself at that intersection of law and politics, and what better place to come than Washington, D.C. I was a staffer on the Senate Judiciary Committee under then Chairman and Ranking Member Patrick Leahy. And was really drawn during my time there to broadcasters who locally I got to know very, very well in Vermont, but also, that intersection of so much of what we talk about here, which is trusted news, the impact of tech on consumer access to trusted news and information, all of these very, very challenging copyright issues that over the time I left the Senate and came over to NAB were really sort of coming into the public consciousness, which is the disruptive effect that big tech was having on access to trusted news and information, how they were monetizing disinformation. And so it's just been, an amazing marriage here, my ability to tell this story of what local broadcasters are doing across the country, obviously being able to leverage that experience on Capitol Hill, understanding how our story is relevant to lawmakers across the country. I think what makes broadcasters really unique is that we have that local presence for all 535 of those members that we hope are watching this show and their staffs. But it was really that time on Capitol Hill, I think, really gave me the visibility into the understanding that really for these policymakers, every decision is local. And if you can't tell your story in a way that tethers it locally, you're sort of dead with just all of the noise in Washington, D.C. So we're very much on offense at NAB, ensuring that we are aligned on a message, many voices telling that same message that will resonate with lawmakers locally. And we think we've got the best story to tell, because whatever an individual lawmaker may think about the media, they tend to really have a strong relationship with their local stations.
Right. Speaking of local stations, you've got the AM Radio in Every Vehicle Act. We've got a couple minutes left. Tell us what's going on with this bill.
Yeah. Well, this bill, the AM for Every Vehicle Act, is really a testament to what we just talked about, which is that members of Congress understand the importance of their local radio stations, and more importantly, their constituents. And there's still more than 80 million listeners across the country who access AM radio every week. They care about access to radio in the dashboard. So we've got a bill that is supported by more than 300 members of the House of Representatives. It's got a filibuster-proof majority of co-sponsorship in the Senate that would ensure that every newly manufactured automobile continues to provide access to AM radio, because a number of automakers, Tesla being the very top of the list, but have begun removing radio from the automobile. So this bill would ensure, as a matter of public safety, that radio continues to be included in the dash. It's broadly supported. I believe this stat may be outdated by a couple of weeks, but for sake of this conversation, let's assume it holds. It is the most co-sponsored policy-oriented piece of legislation in Congress, this Congress, and we're very, very proud of that. So the bill has passed near unanimously out of both the Senate Commerce and the House Energy and Commerce committees. It's now been included as part of the larger surface transportation package. But we're going to be working over the next several months to find a landing spot for this bill and get it over the finish line.
That bill is an amazing one, because people outside of D.C. look at Washington and say Congress is broken, it doesn't do anything. Republicans and Democrats are constantly yelling at each other. But that bill is bipartisan, is going to pass, does something real, is long-lasting, permanent legislation that you'll very likely get done this year.
Yeah, it's a story on the political side of some strange bedfellows, right? The lead sponsors here, Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Ed Markey. Over here on the House side, it's Gus Bilirakis and Frank Pallone. So really, this is a very, very unifying issue. It is nonpartisan. If you look at the co-sponsorship list, it is nearly equally divided, Republican and Democrat. It has the support of the White House, so we look forward to getting this thing over the finish line.
Curtis LeGeyt, President and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Brody Mullins. We'll be back in a few minutes on 535.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
He is what your show is called, The Decider.
It's Washington's hottest new show, and it has the Beltway buzzing.
Americans, they know BS when they see BS.
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brody Mullins.
Is this era ending and is a new era beginning?
And veteran strategist Lisa Camuso Miller.
Have you ever had to tell a client no?
Talk to the biggest and most influential players.
We wanted $1 million. He said done.
Rewriting the rules of influence.
Business is going to be on the ballot.
Congress needs to do their job.
They become lapdogs rather than watchdogs.
The people who never talk.
That's such a good question.
Talk to them.
It was kind of fun, actually.
It's Washington's only show by and for insiders.
Welcome to The Deciders.
Watch weekly right here on 535.
I work hard. My dad worked hard. That's where I got it from. What I take home is my future and my kids' future. And if I can invest in companies, they're going to reflect my principles, what I believe in. So why would those companies hire outside people to tell them to embrace principles I don't believe in? Congress must protect the financial future of Americans from the foreign-owned duopoly that answers to no one.
You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Leanne Caldwell with Puck News, and right now I'm joined with Congressman Garamendi of California. We are going to talk about shipbuilding, trying to bring more ship manufacturing back to the United States. Congressman, thanks so much for being here.
Delighted, and really delighted to talk about the American shipping industry.
So how did you get involved with this issue?
Well, several reasons. First of all, I represent the San Francisco Bay Area, which at one time was one of the major shipbuilding and ship repair places in the world. You go back to World War II, Rosie the Riveter, all the Liberty ships just being pumped out, 1,000 of them. All of that's gone. We had the very first naval base on the West Coast, Mare Island, shut down in 1993. 18,000 jobs gone within 2 weeks. And so this issue has been resonating in that area, and also I'm on the Armed Services Committee. So national defense became a part of this discussion about the demise of the American shipping industry.
Yeah.
So here we are.
So what your legislation does with Senator Mark Kelly over in the Senate, it's about commercial shipping.
Exactly.
So talk to me first before we get deep into it. How does commercial shipping and helping that industry, how is that a national security issue?
Well, let's look at the history. The history of World War II, the fight in the Pacific, we certainly about battleships and aircraft carriers. They were totally dependent upon the resupply of supply ships. Many of those were commercials, but many of those were built, as I mentioned, the Rosie the Riveter building the fleets. Those were all the supply ships. They call it the tyranny of distance. Right now, there have been many studies done about the ability of the American military to sustain a fight in Europe and in the Pacific. Cannot be done because we do not have the ability to resupply.
Oh, wow.
And therefore, what are we going to do? We're going to hire Chinese ships. China builds 1,000 ships, we build one. We don't have the capacity to resupply our military if there is a conflict.
Who builds our ships now?
Well, we only build ships for what is known as the Jones Act. That's the domestic fleet. This is a law that requires if you're going from San Francisco to Galveston, then that has to be an American ship. If you're going from Galveston up the Mississippi, again, American ship. That's the only commercial ships that are built in America today is for that very special domestic use. We don't build ships for what's known as the blue water to go across the Pacific or the Atlantic. We do not have the ability.
Wow.
Given our American fleet, which is basically non-existent,
yeah.
to resupply our military, it is a fundamental national security issue. Therefore, Mark Kelly and I, together with Senator Young and Trent Kelly here in the Congress, took this issue up and said, we need to do something about it. So we developed the SHIPS Act. Now, I've been at this for 15 years here in Congress, and finally, we're about to put forward a major piece of legislation to address this fundamental economic issue and national security issue.
I have seen Senator Young wear a red hat around the Senate that says, "Make shipbuilding great again." I think that he gave one to the president. So why does the U.S. no longer have this capability? Is it because Congress hasn't funded it? Has it been because it's not a Pentagon priority? It's not an American manufacturing priority? What
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. It's also, I suppose, encapsulated in this thing called outsourcing.
Uh-huh.
Somebody was able to do it cheaper. Well, let's see, Korea, Japan, China were able to build ships cheaper than the United States, and therefore, well, we're just going to build our tanker fleet, our roll-on, roll-off fleet. We'll let China do it, or we'll buy those ships from Korea. We still do that. Mm-hmm. The American shipbuilding industry simply disappeared because it was outsourced. Now, we have a conflict with China. Mr. Xi, can you send us a fleet of ships so that we can fight you in the Pacific? Not going to happen.
Right.
National security issue, also an economic issue. The demise of this shipbuilding industry, we're talking about thousands upon tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs, and it's the supply chain, it's the steel, it's the engines, it's all of those pieces of the puzzle, including the mariners on the ships. So the SHIPS Act covers everything, all of the pieces of the puzzle. The rebuilding of the facilities that are necessary to build the ports, the funding mechanisms to subsidize the development of these ships, the guarantee of cargo. They say cargo is king. Yes, it is. But we all in this legislation, each piece of that puzzle that would give us a full picture of how we can rebuild the American maritime industry is in the SHIPS Act. And it's downright exciting. The president wants it. We have bipartisan, bicameral. We're on the road here.
When you say cargo is king...
Excuse me. We're on the water here.
We're on the water. When you say cargo is king, what does that mean? How does legislation ensure cargo?
Two pieces, multiple pieces of this. First of all, military cargo on American ships.
Okay.
Secondly, American foreign aid on American ships.
Because currently it's not?
No.
Okay.
Some of it, yes, but there's a constant effort to hire foreign ships for the purposes. Military does it all the time.
Wow.
We've written into the National Defense Authorization, no, you cannot do that. You're going to use American ships. So the multiple ways that we can assure that domestically derived cargo is on American ships, both coming and going. But that's a piece of the puzzle. But also we need to recognize, wait a minute, how is China able to build ships so cheaply? Turns out they're not building them less expensive than American, but what they have is enormous subsidies. China, Korea, Japan subsidize to a fairly well the construction of those ships. Can we do that? The law's been in place for 70 years to provide assistance for American shipbuilding. We haven't used it for the last 50 years, but part of what we have in this program is a program to provide good facilities. We're going to upgrade the facilities. We have a funding mechanism, a fee on every container that's coming from China. We're going to use that to build American ships.
Is there any government dollars that are going to be needed for this?
Government funding is in the legislation, but we derive that money from the commerce in and out, mostly the commerce that's coming into the United States. There's a fee on every container. There are other fees that exist today. Those fees would be used specifically for the purposes of rebuilding the American shipbuilding and shipping industry.
So why now? Why, you said you've been working on this for 15 years. So why is it fine? Why do you feel so optimistic at this moment?
Well, because it takes a while. It takes a while to understand the complexity, the economic complexities, the subsidies that China, they hide their subsidies, as did Japan and Korea. We know those subsidies are there. We know what the competition is, and it takes a while to assemble the necessary support. This legislation has support from every conceivable part of the maritime industry. The steel companies, the manufacturers of domestic steel, the engines, all of the other parts and pieces that go into a ship. That total supply chain is now on board. It takes time to assemble that. It takes time for people to understand, well, why are we in trouble? Well, part of it is that we've let our, frankly, our ports rot. The piers are falling down. We need to build that back up. And we need to, and this is something that we started actually, I guess when I first arrived here in 2009 and 10, we started with what we called the Make It in America agenda. Steny Hoyle and I, we said, well, let's make it in America. We had our own hat. It wasn't red. And then Trump came along in 2016, 17, and he said, we're going to make it in America. Go out of the way, President, do it. And so he picked it up. And so now at that presidential level, it put more emphasis and more power behind it. and Trump has continued. And in this particular situation, serendipity, my colleague on the Readiness Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee, I was the chair, he was the ranking member, Michael Walsh. He became chair, I became ranking member, and he took up this issue, as did I, about the American shipbuilding. He then went over to the White House, sitting next to the president, saying, hey, we can build ships, Mr. Trump, Mr. President, we can build ships. And the president bought into it. And so now we have the president talking about his maritime strategy. It fits almost identical to the legislation that Michael, I, and my two other colleagues have put together. So why do the stars align? Well, it has aligned. And so we've got a real opportunity. Right now, we're looking at the National Defense Authorization
Okay,
Act.
I was going to ask how. Yeah.
It's up in the House, on the floor next week, or maybe after the 4th of July. And we've opened the door in the National Defense Authorization Act for a critical national security piece that has not been considered previously in our national defense programs, and that is the commercial shipping industry that is absolutely essential for the success of our military. So we may be successful in putting that into the National Defense Authorization in its fullness.
What are the roadblocks? Why wouldn't someone support this?
Well, isn't it? Well, what do you mean you don't support this? We've come to the point where people are lining up. The entire maritime industry, from the manufacturers of radar to the other, the training programs, they're all looking at this and say, yeah, this is in the legislation. The training programs at our maritime academies, the unions that have provided the men and women, the training programs, the apprenticeship programs, all of this is lining up together with a better understanding that it is a long way from Long Beach to Guam. It's a 10-day trip. So how do you get the material there? How do you get the munitions there? How do we resupply? And suddenly studies that were done a decade ago are now being read by the military and by members of Congress. And they're saying, yeah, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to phone China and ask for a bunch of ships. We're going to have our own ships.
If this legislation passes this year, how long will it take to rebuild this industry?
This industry didn't die in a year. This industry died a slow death over 3 decades. Will it take 3 decades to rebuild it? I don't think so. I do know that one piece of this legislation that I worked on a decade ago, we were exporting oil and natural gas. And America is the biggest exporter in the world of oil and natural gas. And we go, none of it's on American ships. Why not? So Senator Wicker, who is now the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, he and I introduced a legislation that would require that a 10% of that oil and natural gas be on American-built ships. That's 40 to 50 ships in the next decade. And Senator Wicker, what happened over this 10 years? He became chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And so here we go. How did this come about? Well, it's something we worked on a decade ago, introduced the legislation, and here we have the opportunity in this legislation to require that a certain percentage of that export of oil and natural gas be on American-built ships. So we spread the wealth. We spread the opportunity. The petroleum industry, they're kind of picky about this. They don't want to do it. And I go, come on, guys. You're making enough money. You can, this is like, I don't know, 10 cents a barrel. Come on. And it's about being able to sustain our military, to rebuild our manufacturing base, steel, all of the pieces and parts, all of those are going to be part of this new industrialization of the American shipbuilding industry.
Interesting. Let me ask you about readiness, about military readiness. There's obviously a war that is in a ceasefire, apparently, in Iran, but there's been lots of concerns about ammunition and that low ammunition supply for the U.S. What is your understanding of how dire or not the situation is?
Almost all of that is classified. It shouldn't be, but the military has classified it because they don't want the public to know the real situation. However, let's look at what's going on.
Yeah.
2 days ago, the president says to the defense industry,
yeah,
you come on down to my office, and he invited in the military leaders, and we're going to talk about rebuilding our arsenals, rebuilding our magazines. Now, is this a real problem? Well, let's just say, yeah, it's a real problem. How do I know? Because I know all the big defense contractors, the people that make the missiles, that make the munitions, they were in the president's office together with the leadership of the Pentagon. Why were they there? Because there is a problem. Is it serious enough for the president to invite those folks in, to sit down and say, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
It's serious. Now, why is it classified? Because they want to hide the reality. It's a problem.
Is there a time frame of how long how many months or years worth of ammunition and arsenal that the U.S. has?
There are some that say that the Iran war, all of the missiles flying back and forth, was called off because somebody at the Pentagon was subtracting.
Wow.
And they go, uh-oh, time out. We don't want to run to zero.
Huh.
So, is that true or not? Whether it's true or not, we have a problem.
Yeah.
The extent of it is serious enough that the president took the time with the leaders of the military and the defense industry to sit down and say, we got to solve it.
Have you seen that classified information?
I've seen, yes. The answer is yes. And no, I'm not going to share it with you. But the reality is it's a serious problem. Now, we have the responsibility in this extraordinarily increase in the defense budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. That's $1.5 trillion, $500 billion increase. Where's that money going to be spent? Is it going to be spent on rebuilding our munitions, rebuilding the capacity to produce these systems, or not? And I must say that the information that we're getting from the White House, from the Pentagon, is just give us the money and we'll do good things with it.
They're not giving you detailed information.
I think Reagan had it right. Trust and verify. Do I trust that it'll be spent well? No. Are they willing to verify that it'll be spent well? They must. Otherwise, they shouldn't have the money. We know there's a problem. We know it has to be addressed. We have to know how much money is necessary. What is the production schedule? How long will it take? None of that has been provided to those of us that are on the Armed Services Committee or on the Appropriations Committee.
What do you think about the supplemental that the administration notified Congress about?
We've been asking, we've got this war going on, Epic Fury and its predecessor, how many munitions were used, what is necessary, what's happened with the bases. Now the Readiness Subcommittee is responsible for the bases. To this day, they have refused to give the committee, the subcommittee, of which I'm the ranking member, the information about what happened to our bases in the Middle East. You know, we have some indication it's not good. It's going to be very expensive to rebuild, and are we going to rebuild the old way or a new way? The military has not come to the Congress with the necessary information that we must have to answer those questions. But we do know that every one of our bases in the Gulf and beyond were hit by Iranian missiles, and the damage is thought to be significant.
Congressman Garamendi, we are almost out of time. On a lighter note, you have agreed to 5:35 1 minutes, and so I'm going just to ask you a fun question.
Sure.
What are you going to do in your August recess?
Well, I'm going to get a new knee.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, when I was playing football at the University of California at Berkeley, with some success, the orthopedist said, you're going to have a problem in about 20 years. Well, that was much more than 20 years.
Yeah, wow. So it lasted
It was like 60 years ago.
Wow.
So, but it's now. I'm going to do that, but basically Patty and I are going to enjoy our family and our grandchildren as will recover from the knee operation. And like you, our grandchildren are young, and they're just a joy.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. And I had the pleasure of meeting your kids since it's my time.
Yes.
They're really cool. They're sitting right over there.
Thank you. They are right off camera.
And it's really, really important to bring your kids to your work.
Yeah.
And we've been able to do that. Patty produced a little book, and the title is "You Always Took Us With You."
Oh.
And you're doing that.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's a good mama.
Oh, well, thank you. Congressman Garamendi, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And I have, as Congressman Garamendi just said, my own personal point of privilege. My children are here today because we were lucky enough to get a tour of the Capitol Dome, which we just finished. I think that we have a
Are they sitting over there?
They are.
If they came over to their mama's lap, they'd be on TV right now.
You would.
Come on.
You want to come over? Come on, come on. So look at the camera. This is Ellison, and this is Penrose, and we just got a tour of the Capitol Dome.
Cool. Cool.
Thanks for watching 535. We'll be right back.
Always take them with you.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the People's House, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions or comments or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
In Afghanistan, the IED actually penetrated the vehicle between my legs, but it was a miracle that we all survived in the vehicle.
When I began the process to separate from the military, it was during COVID. And with the issues back home, we just knew we got to come back home and take care of the family. So we had to go stay at our mom's house. And there was already 3 people living there, and 5 of us, or 8 people. How many bedroom? Like a 2-bedroom. Like a 2-bedroom house. We were desperate.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we going to do now?
When I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm, and I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. They've really been a blessing.
I'm in the Permanent Homes for Veterans program. They built a house for me, and it's amazing.
We got the call, this is your house, and the kids and I took off just to go sit in the driveway and cry. It's life-changing. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account.
The best way to describe Operation Homefront is that it's like a family, because they're always there for you.
I would say you guys are angels behind closed doors.
Operation Homefront has impacted my family in a way that's probably going to be passed down through my family's history. It's definitely going to be a story that's going to be told for generations.
Back on 535, I'm Scott McFarland. Debbie Dingell represents the 6th District of Michigan, been in Congress since 2015, represents downriver, suburban Detroit, and the Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County areas. Also a critical leader inside the Democratic caucus. Some of the bills we're talking about during Trade and Tech Week involve threats from China. You have legislation, a multitude of legislation addressing that threat. But I want to start off, as we should with Michigan, with connected automobiles. Obviously a hometown issue, but also a global one. Tell us what the legislation does, Ms. Dingell, involving connected automobiles and what you want to change.
Well, John Molinar, my Republican colleague, and I have introduced legislation that would ban the Chinese from being able to manufacture in this country. And there are a lot of issues connected with it, by the way. First of all, our workers, our industry can compete with anybody on a level playing field. But people do not understand that China, not just on connected vehicles, but electric vehicles, other vehicles, we're not playing on a level playing field. They subsidize the production. Many people think at least 50% or more. They manipulate their currency. They use slave labor. We're not competing on a level playing field. And what they try to do is to come in and destroy other industries, and then when they're destroyed, jack up the prices. And we're not going to let that happen. Nor even as we negotiate. So John Molinar and I are, and there's a similar bill. They've made some changes on the Senate side. Bernie Moreno and Alyssa Slotkin. I'm a very hardliner on this, no carve-outs, are working on that piece. But another piece of this is the USMCA. China's trying to build a plant in Mexico and then market it as a North American vehicle. No, cannot and will not let that happen. And then when you get into the kind of connected vehicles that you're talking about, people do not understand. Right now, autonomous vehicles, someday we'll get a bill passed in this United States Congress that'll protect this industry and keep us at the forefront of innovation and technology.
A couple things to unpack there. First of all, you mentioned EVs and you mentioned connected cars. Let me start with connected cars. Though it's intuitive to somebody from Michigan, it's intuitive for somebody who has so many auto workers in her district. Explain what a connected car is.
Well, connected car is how you connect with other vehicles, or you connect with surroundings in
GPS.
GPS. It may ultimately be an autonomous vehicle. Right now, we are not allowed in China with an autonomous vehicle. And just as an aside, the auto industry cannot. You have to partner with ultimately the Communist Chinese government if you're in China. Here, the companies are just coming in and taking over. We're not allowed to test. We're not allowed to be on the road in China. We are banned. China is in this country right now driving autonomous vehicles, they're quote unquote tests, and they're gathering data. They're driving by military bases and gathering data. And you know what else people don't understand? When you get into these vehicles, any electronics you have, they're collecting that data from your phone, your computer, your iPad. And they're also collecting data about where you're going, where you're driving, and quite frankly, probably listening to your conversation to boot. That is not right. Bob Latta is joining John Molinar and I in wanting to address that problem and all of this too.
And the players in this make sense. Congressman Molinar has been leading a committee on Chinese Communist Party and its influence in the U.S. Mr. Latta, like yourself, in Northwest Ohio, has a lot of auto plants, or
Correct.
at least auto-related plants. How do you build a bigger coalition outside of these intuitive states and districts where the auto industry has a huge foothold?
Well, we have, again, it's two autonomous vehicles. We've been trying to get a framework passed for a decade. And there are a lot of, safety needs to be front and foremost, but I don't think people understand what is already happening without our having a framework for what's happening, or what is happening in terms of data collection by China in a whole bunch of ways. When you talk about manufacturing, not allowing China to manufacture in this country, first of all, any state that has autos, not everybody's union, you've got southern states, but I think a lot of people don't understand this issue and what a threat China is to us from both an economic security issue and a national security issue. So we have to go out and educate people in every state about what the issues are. But maybe I'll take this opportunity to also make a point that I'm making to the autos. They don't have a lot of friends up here anymore. When I was younger, I'm not old, but I'm seasoned, that kind of coalition that you talked about, auto industry is still the backbone of the American economy. Too many people don't need it. Industry stopped caring about relationships. We got to restore those relationships and educate people about
How
the
recently do you
importance.
think those expired? Because obviously in 2009 there were enough surrogates to help salvage the auto industry. Is it a more recent dynamic?
I think that's a good year to go back to. I think there were issues. I mean, if you had not had two presidents of the United States, starting with George Bush, and then Secretary of Treasury, and then President Obama and his team, people didn't want to do what they did. But the importance of the auto industry and the impact that it would have had in the economy and the number of people that would have lost jobs, not only in what we call the OEMs, the original, the GM, the Fords, but the supplier industry, the dealer industry, the restaurants, the carpet manufacturers in local communities. And everybody knew that this economy would have collapsed if something didn't happen. But it also turned off so many people. They wanted nothing to do. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to see it. And the industry let that happen.
It was part of that dynamic in 2009 and 2010 that gave rise to a Tea Party and an their characterization, bailout mentality. Saying the auto industry relationships here are frayed still from that dynamic.
Much more frayed. There aren't, I mean, I haven't seen a CEO of either of any of the companies up here talking to people. I mean, I obviously see them at home, and quite frankly, I still know. I mean, I was in the industry for 30 years. Mary Barr and I started at General Motors together, and I've obviously, you know, the Fords are friends, and Jim Farley and I have our moments, but we love each other. We're not afraid to fight. But I don't think many people even know these guys or talk about them. They see them in the White House, and quite frankly, a lot of people see them intimidated or afraid. And we've got an industry now that's a ping pong ball between administrations. And these companies don't want to get caught in the middle. They don't want to be a ping pong ball. What we need for every company in this America, the corporations that are providing jobs, manufacturing, is stability. They need stability. They need certainty.
Yeah. To that end, you do have a lot of colleagues who have very strong thoughts on electric vehicles. And you mentioned EVs earlier. I've heard Republican primaries where they try to outflank each other with stronger opposition to electric vehicles. How's that impacting Michigan? How is it impacting the dynamics you just described?
Well, I want to talk about, well, it is impacting. The industry, we need to be competing in a global marketplace. And this country, because of the current president, because of some candidates, didn't want, the last 18 months, got very negative about electric vehicles. Having said that, the price of gasoline going up in the last few months has also made people wish that they could get an electric vehicle, but electric vehicles are expensive. And this administration eliminated the tax credit, which was helping that transition phase as companies scaled up to do more mass production. Other countries want electric vehicles. And again, we're giving the market to China, we're giving it to Japan, to Asia, instead of competing in it and leading in it. And we put the world on wheels. I don't want anybody to ever forget this country, Michigan, where I come from, I'm a car girl, put the world on wheels. And we have to stay at the forefront of innovation and technology. We can't cede our leadership, God forbid, to China, but to any other country. So we need to be looking at what we're doing to keep our country there and to keep a secure and strong auto industry for both economic security and national security.
Explain the process to us in our remaining time. Where does this bill you have go next? I know it's partnered with other legislation on bio hazards, on pipeline safety. What's the next step for it?
Well, each of those is a different bill. We're not going to be able to talk about. Molnar and I did the biotech bill in China. I want everybody, if I take another message to everybody listening to us today, how much of our medicine is produced in another country? You know, like 80 to 90% of our medicine that we take is made in China or India. That's a national security issue. But each of them is different. We're offering in the NDAA as an amendment. Could be on.
Must pass legislation. So.
That's what we're looking at. I'm not sure anything in this Congress is going to be must pass legislation, but that's what we're looking at.
A couple minutes left. Let's talk a bit about the Michigan 6th District. It is distinctive in its own way. Explain to folks what Downriver is. It is culturally different. It's politically unique. The Dingells have had quite a footprint there.
You know why I love my district? Because my district is a mini America. I have the Downrivers are where I'm from. It's our roots. It was a very heavy industrial It's where a lot of plants built up. There were steel plants, auto plants, energy plants.
Uniquely blue collar.
It is uniquely blue collar. But blue collar these are good work, and they're the backbone of America. And it's right on the river, and I love it. I have Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, which Ann Arbor is very reflective of some of the more progressive you've seen. But then I have Western Washtenaw that was represented by Tim Wahlberg until 4 years ago, and it's farmers, and it's where a lot of the country is. It's independent. And then I have Western Wayne, which is Plymouth and Northville Township, Plymouth Township, Canton, and Novi, where you used to live.
Which is a white collar, increasingly white collar area. What's the best food in the 6th? Sorry.
Oh, that's hard.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but we're going to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm a pizza girl, but Zingerman's, you can't beat Zingerman's either. But Downriver has great, I don't pick any. I love it all. And the junkier it is, the more I love it.
Let me tell you something. If you spend time in Michigan, you'll also learn the phrase Coney Islands. And they're
That's
part
junk
of,
food. It is.
It is, but it's in the best possible way.
Oh, totally.
Debbie Dingell, in Congress since 2015 with the Michigan 6th District. That is all for 535. I ask unanimous consent to gavel out. Hearing no objection. There we go. We'll see you Tuesday, 11 a.m. when the U.S. House returns here to Washington. Have a great weekend.